The invention of the wheel, if I may put it this way, invented a mind. And in becoming inventors, we begin to...
The wheel, humanity's quiet revolution, so ordinary today that we rarely pause to ask where it truly began. For centuries, a single neat story sat in our textbooks. The wheel sprang to life in Mesopotamia, cradle of civilization and beacon of invention. But new clues are surfacing, and they refuse to stay silent. Fragments of wood lifted from ancient bogs, markings etched into forgotten pottery, and linguistic echoes hidden in prehistoric. Tongues all point to a tangled origin far older and wider than we once believed. What if the wheel's beginning is not a straight line but a labyrinth of competing ideas and distant experiments? What if the invention that changed every road and every culture emerged not from one brilliant flash of genius, but from a messy chorus of necessity, patience, and human persistence? Stay with this story as we follow the trail backward, beyond the neat narrative of Mesopotamia, beyond the myths of a single birthplace, to the damp forests, cold plains, and copper-dark tunnels where the first wheels may have turned. Long before a round disk ever rolled across the earth, humans had already proven themselves master innovators. Fire was an ancient companion. Weaving and textiles clothed communities. Agriculture tamed the land, and boats skimmed rivers and seas. By 5000 BCE, people shaped metals, built monumental stone structures, and navigated trade routes across water. Yet for all their cleverness, one challenge remained stubborn: moving heavy loads across solid ground. The problem was simple to describe and painfully hard to solve. A basket of grain could be carried. A stone slab for a temple could not. Earth is not forgiving. Dirt clings, ruts form, hills fight every inch of progress. Without an efficient method to move bulk goods, settlements had natural limits. Farmers could harvest more grain than they could transport. Miners could dig copper but struggle to haul it home. Builders could dream of great walls yet fail to lift the stones. This gap shaped early society. Communities clustered along rivers and coastlines where water bore the burden that land refused. In these villages, people fished, traded, and prospered, but they also dreamed of a way to break free of the riverbanks. They needed something that would make the land itself a highway. Before the first wheel, the sledge was humanity's workhorse. Picture a rough wooden platform of heavy planks, perhaps reinforced with branches or bark, with thick ropes tied to its front. People or animals dragged it over earth and rock. At first it felt like progress, better than carrying everything on one's back. But reality quickly intruded. The flat bottom of a sledge bit into soil and sand, creating fierce resistance. On rocky terrain it snagged and jolted. Down a slope it slid wildly, threatening to tip its load or crush its handlers. Ropes frayed under strain. Wood split. For every improvement, polishing the bottom, adding bark, soaking it in oil, new problems appeared. The harder early innovators tried to refine it, the more obvious the core flaw became. Dragging weight across Earth is an endless fight against friction. Other experiments followed. Some tried wider bases to distribute weight. Others added animal power. But whether pulled by human arms or oxen, the sledge remained a compromise at best. It could move a heavy object a short distance. It could not sustain the growing ambitions of farming villages or the expanding reach of trade. People needed a different principle, not just a better plank. Because land resisted, water became the lifeline. Early settlements hugged rivers, lakes, and coastal deltas where boats could glide with minimal effort. From the Nile to the Indus, waterways became the natural highways of the ancient world. Boats carried grain harvests, quarried stone, and copper ore far more efficiently than any land method. Trade flourished along these aquatic corridors, and cultures grew where rivers allowed goods to flow. But as villages swelled into towns and towns pressed toward early city-states, the river system showed its limits. Fields expanded beyond easy river access. Mines opened in highlands and forests where no boat could travel. Builders demanded ever larger stones and beams. Seasonal floods made routes unreliable. The old dependence on water began to feel like a shackle. To move the materials of civilization, grain for bread, copper for tools, stones for temples, people needed a new way to conquer the stubborn earth. The breakthrough did not arrive in a single spark of genius. It crept forward in slow, clever improvisations. One early trick was the roller, a single log placed beneath a heavy object so it could be nudged forward as the log turned. When the load passed over the log, the roller was moved from the back to the front, repeating the process. This was useful, but awkward. It required multiple people and constant repositioning. Over time, someone noticed how grooves in well-used logs hinted at a new idea. What if instead of rolling an entire log, you shaped a slice of wood into a round disc that could spin freely? Carpenters experimented. They refined logs into circular slices and imagined a fixed axle running through a hub so the disc could rotate while the axle stayed stable. This was a far more complex challenge than it sounds. The disc had to be strong yet light enough to turn. The hole through the center had to be precise. The axle needed to bear weight without splitting. These were problems of geometry and material science long before those terms existed. Only with sharp tools and steady hands could craftsmen carve wood that wouldn't crack and joints that wouldn't loosen. The principle was there: transform friction's drag into smooth rotation, but the technology to execute it demanded time, skill, and new tools. Little by little, trial and error brought humanity closer to a device that could carry civilization on its rim. Inventing a wheel wasn't just imagining a circle. It was engineering. Early stone tools could not cut clean, round shapes or bore straight holes. A true wheel and axle system requires symmetry, balance, and durable connections between moving and fixed parts. Until the rise of copper tools around 4000 BCE, precision carpentry of this kind was nearly impossible. Copper chisels and drills provided the sharpness and strength to create smooth bores and finely joined hubs. Without them, even a bright idea for a rotating disc would have stayed a dream. Thus, the delay was not mental, but material. Human ingenuity had to wait for metallurgy to catch up. When the right tools and the pressing need finally aligned, the impossible began to roll. For centuries, the accepted origin of the wheel centered on Mesopotamia. Textbooks tell of Uruk around 3500 BCE, where Sumerian artisans supposedly discovered that spinning a lump of clay on a rotating stone sped pottery production. The potter's wheel, a simple flat disc turning on a pivot, transformed mud into flawless vessels and spread rapidly through the markets of early cities. The leap from shaping clay to moving carts seems logical. By about 3200 BCE, clay tablets depict four-wheeled wagons hauling grain and tools across the fertile plain. The famous Standard of Ur, a decorated mosaic dating to around 2600 BCE, even shows war wagons drawn by donkeys. This narrative fit beautifully. The land that gave humanity writing, mathematics, and law also bestowed the wheel. For generations, it was taught as fact, a tidy story of invention radiating outward from the cradle of civilization. But tidy stories can hide a messy truth. As archaeological methods improved, evidence emerged that refused to conform to the Mesopotamian timeline. Each new discovery cracked the once solid crown of Sumer's claim. The first shock arrived in the 1970s, when archaeologists in Poland unearthed a clay pot dated to about 3630 BCE etched with markings that looked unmistakably like wheeled vehicles, centuries before Mesopotamia's first known wagons. Then in 2002, divers in Slovenia's Ljubljana marshes pulled a remarkably preserved solid oak wheel from the muck. Radiocarbon testing dated it to around 3340 BCE, making it at least a century older than any Mesopotamian cart evidence. The wheel's square axle hole remained intact, and wear patterns showed it had carried real loads across damp, rugged trails. Even more startling were small clay wheels found north of the Black Sea, some placed in children's graves before 4000 BCE. These miniature wheels were not toys, but scale models of functioning wagons. Their presence implies that real wagons already existed in that region when Mesopotamia was still perfecting its pottery. Each find chipped away at the simple narrative of a single birthplace. Did the technology spread with lightning speed across thousands of kilometers? Or did multiple cultures solve the challenge independently? Linguistic research added another twist. Scholars tracing the word wheel found its roots not in Sumerian, but in Proto-Indo-European, a language family linked to the steppe nomads of Eastern Europe and the Caucasus. Their cold plains and mobile lifestyle may have demanded wheeled transport long before city-state merchants in Mesopotamia felt the need. Together, these discoveries paint a more complex picture. Rather than one epicenter, the wheel may have been a convergent innovation, sparked by necessity in several distant places almost simultaneously. Civilization's most iconic tool could be the result of a global conversation carried on by action rather than words. Language often preserves what archaeology cannot. The Proto-Indo-European root kwekflos, meaning wheel or circle, echoes through countless descendants: Greek kaiklos, Latin cyclus, Old English hueol. This shared root suggests that the concept of a wheel was embedded in the vocabulary of peoples who roamed the Eurasian steppe millennia ago, independent of Sumerian influence. If the wheel were purely a Mesopotamian export, we might expect borrowed terms. Instead, we find deep native words tied to the roaming herders of the north. These linguistic fossils align with archaeological finds, hinting that wheeled transport was integral to steppe cultures and perhaps originated there, or at least developed in parallel with southern innovations. With Mesopotamia's monopoly questioned, attention turns to Europe's rugged frontiers. Some scholars propose that the wheel's earliest true cradle lay in the marshes and forests, stretching from the Black Sea to the Carpathian Mountains. Here, communities mined copper as early as 4000 BCE, forging tools and ornaments that demanded transport. Imagine miners in damp, dark shafts pulling heavy ore to the surface. Sledges would bog in mud. Rivers were distant or frozen. Necessity, that relentless mother of invention, may have inspired new solutions. Archaeological traces of fortified settlements, complex metallurgy, and early roads in this region support the idea of a culture technologically capable and motivated to craft the first wheeled vehicles. The Slovenian wheel, the Polish pot, and the steppe grave goods all fit neatly into this landscape of innovation. Rather than a single Mesopotamian spark, we may be seeing a web of experimentation stretching across Europe and Western Asia, each culture nudging the technology forward until it converged into the familiar wheel and axle. To untangle this mystery, a team from the University of Illinois, Columbia University, and Georgia Tech undertook a groundbreaking project in 2024. They combined archaeology with computational structural mechanics, a field that uses advanced modeling to test how objects bear stress and motion. By virtually reconstructing ancient wooden wheels and simulating their performance, the researchers compared designs from Mesopotamia, the European steppe, and the Carpathian region. Their findings pointed to a surprising possibility. The earliest structurally sound wheels may indeed have originated near the Carpathian copper mines around 3900 BCE, decades before the oldest Mesopotamian evidence. The conclusion does not erase Mesopotamia's brilliance. Rather, it broadens our appreciation of humanity's shared ingenuity. The wheel may have been invented not once but several times, each birth responding to local needs and materials. Today, we drive on paved highways and fly across continents, but every modern journey carries the echo of those first rotating discs. The wheel's true origin is no longer a single dot on a map. It is a testament to the many hands and minds that refuse to be bound by riverbanks or rutted trails, a reminder that history is a tapestry, not a straight line. Once the wheel existed, its journey across the ancient world was astonishingly swift. By 2000 BCE, wheeled carts rolled through the fertile valleys of the Indus and across the plains of China. Evidence from the Sintashta culture of the Eurasian steppe shows light, spoked chariots, technological marvels built for speed, appearing not long after the first solid wheels. Trade routes carried more than goods. They carried ideas. Merchants and migrants passed through Central Asian corridors, along the Persian Gulf and across the Mediterranean. With each encounter, the wheel adapted to new needs. Heavier axles for grain wagons in Egypt, slender spoke designs for warriors in the Levant, and sturdy sled wheel hybrids in the snowy north. This rapid diffusion speaks to the invention's obvious value. A culture might resist foreign gods or alien customs, but no one refused a technology that could triple a farmer's output or transform an army's mobility. Within a few centuries, the wheel was no longer an experiment. It was a global language of movement. The earliest wheels were for hauling, but people quickly discovered other possibilities. Potter's wheels spun clay into elegant shapes long before wagons rumbled down roads. Water wheels harnessed river currents to grind grain, turning natural energy into mechanical power. Even toys, miniature carts, and rolling animals appeared in children's graves, proof that the wheel captured imagination as well as labor. As metallurgy advanced, engineers realized that wheels could mesh together as gears, transferring motion in intricate machines. From the gearwork of Hellenistic automata to the delicate cogs of medieval clock towers, the wheel became the heartbeat of precision. It was no longer just a means to travel. It was a principle to build upon, a repeating circle that turned time itself into something humans could measure. For thousands of years, wood and bronze sufficed. Then the Industrial Revolution redefined the wheel once again. Iron rims and steel spokes allowed heavier loads and faster speeds. Steam locomotives raced across continents on flanged train wheels. Rubber tires brought comfort to bicycles and carriages. By the late 19th century, the internal combustion engine married the wheel to unprecedented power, giving rise to the automobile and the airplane's landing gear. In factories, wheels shrank into the teeth of complex gears driving looms, presses, and turbines. What began as a simple round disc became the foundation of global industry. Every revolution of a machine's wheel echoed the first log rolled under a heavy stone, proof of how one idea can evolve without losing its essence. Beyond mechanics, the wheel seeped into human symbolism. It represents eternity in Buddhist Dharma wheels, fate in the medieval Wheel of Fortune, and cosmic order in countless cultures. Philosophers used it to explain cycles of history, poets to describe love's turning seasons. These metaphors remind us that the wheel is more than an artifact. It is a pattern we see in nature, the orbits of planets, the cycle of life and death, and a pattern we impose on society. The physical invention shaped our roads. The idea of the wheel shaped our imagination. Today, we talk of progress in straight lines, yet our technologies remain filled with wheels, turbines in power plants, gyroscopes in spacecraft, microscopic gear wheels inside watches and medical devices. Even digital life depends on spinning hard drives and rotating fans. New frontiers, such as maglev trains and hover vehicles, may seem wheelless, but the principle of smooth, continuous motion they pursue is the wheel's descendant. The circle remains humanity's quiet partner, a reminder that the future, like the past, often turns back on itself. While wheels are usually linked to transport or machinery, they quietly shaped architecture as well. Ancient builders used massive wooden capstans, essentially giant vertical wheels, to raise stones in temples and fortresses. Later, medieval cathedral cranes turned enormous tread wheels powered by human or animal walkers, lifting blocks high above crowded towns. These devices transformed construction from brute labor to controlled engineering. With each rotation, the wheel extended human reach skyward, making possible everything from Roman aqueducts to Gothic spires. Every stone arch that still stands owes something to a wheel hidden behind the scaffolding. Agriculture, too, was revolutionized. Wheeled plows allowed farmers to cultivate larger fields with less effort, while carts and wagons expanded the distance crops could travel before spoiling. Threshing machines and grinding mills used gears and pulleys to process grain on a scale, unthinkable in purely hand-powered societies. The result was surplus, food beyond immediate needs, which in turn supported larger populations, urban centers, and specialized trades. Without wheeled farming technology, the complex economies of classical civilizations might never have blossomed. The wheel didn't just move goods. It fed the growth of cities and the rise of empires. From the earliest chariots to modern armored vehicles, the wheel has always been a weapon of strategy. Ancient charioteers of Egypt and Mesopotamia used light, spoked wheels for speed and maneuverability, giving them decisive advantages on open plains. In the Middle Ages, siege engines like trebuchets relied on massive wheel-based winches to hurl stones across fortress walls. Even today, the choice between wheeled and tracked vehicles shapes military doctrine. Armored personnel carriers, mobile artillery, and supply trucks all depend on refined wheel technology. The simple circle that once carried a potter's clay now defines the logistics of modern armies. Artists have long been drawn to the form of the wheel. Celtic knotwork spirals echo its endless motion, while Native American medicine wheels embody harmony and balance. In contemporary art, kinetic sculptures use rotating discs to play with light and perception. Musicians, too, have celebrated it. Think of the wheel of time in folk songs or the hypnotic rotations of a vinyl record. In every culture, the wheel has become a canvas for meaning, bridging the mechanical and the spiritual. Our modern world often seems wheel-less, full of touchscreens and invisible code. Yet tiny wheels spin ceaselessly in hard disk drives, cooling fans, and electric motors. Robotic arms in factories rely on precisely geared wheels to assemble microchips. Even when we store data in the cloud, vast server farms hum with hidden turbines and drives. The physical wheel remains the silent engine of the digital revolution, proving that even in an era of pure information, motion still depends on circles of steel and silicon. Engineers now dream of transportation that defies the wheel. Maglev trains floating on magnetic cushions, hovercraft gliding on air, drones that fly packages to our doors. Yet these technologies often borrow from wheel principles. Balanced rotation, controlled momentum, circular motion transformed into linear thrust. So even if future highways hum with levitating vehicles, the conceptual wheel will still spin within the physics and design of every new machine. It is less an object than a blueprint for smooth, continuous movement. The wheel did more than move goods. It inspired minds to see the universe itself as a system of cycles. Ancient astronomers traced the circular paths of planets and stars, imagining the heavens as vast, interlocking wheels. Greek philosophers described the celestial spheres, while early Indian mathematicians used circular motion to explain eclipses and seasons. These observations encouraged the study of geometry and trigonometry, disciplines essential to modern science. Every time we picture an orbit, model an atom, or speak of cycles in ecosystems, we echo the wheel's shape in our understanding of nature. Medicine quietly relies on wheels. The first centrifuges separated blood components by spinning samples at high speed. MRI machines rotate superconducting magnets, creating the images that diagnose hidden illnesses. Even the humble wheelchair, perfected over centuries, grants mobility and independence to millions. Dental drills, surgical robots, and hospital ventilators all use precision gears and miniature wheels. In each case, controlled rotation provides the delicate power that saves lives, proving that the wheel's gift to humanity reaches far beyond transport or industry. When humans left Earth, they took the wheel with them. Mars rovers roll across alien soil on specially designed wheels that withstand extreme temperatures and sharp rocks. Spacecraft use reaction wheels, rapidly spinning disks, to orient themselves in the vacuum where no air allows steering. Future space habitats may create artificial gravity through rotating rings, letting astronauts walk in a gentle spin that mimics Earth's pull. Even as we aim for the stars, the principle of the wheel continues to guide our steps and keep us alive far from home. The wheel did more than enable trade. It reshaped economies. Carts and wagons expanded markets, allowing surplus harvests to reach distant buyers. Merchants could travel farther, increasing competition and lowering costs. Industrial wheels, gears in textile mills, turbines in power plants, multiplied production and transformed labor patterns. The simple act of rotation became a driver of wealth, setting in motion the global commerce we depend on today. Every revolution has consequences. Wheeled transport encouraged roads that cut through forests and grasslands, altering ecosystems. Industrial machinery powered by wheels increased resource extraction and pollution. Today, engineers seek greener solutions, regenerative braking in electric cars, recycled rubber for tires, and energy-producing water wheels that harness rivers without dams. The wheel that once symbolized pure progress now challenges us to balance motion with stewardship of the planet. Throughout history, thinkers have used the wheel as a metaphor for time, destiny, and renewal. Eastern philosophies embrace the endless cycle of birth and rebirth. Medieval Europeans spoke of fortune's wheel turning kings into paupers and paupers into kings. These ideas persist because the wheel's geometry mirrors life itself. Beginnings and endings that return to the same point, motion without a final stop. The wheel teaches that progress is not merely forward but continual, a dance of return and change.